It's time for today's episode of the UGA Sports Live Podcast, recorded in front of a slightly tipsy studio audience at world-famous Champy's Fried Chicken. We will have the latest on Georgia Bulldogs football, basketball, and recruiting. Watch live and send us your questions on the 11 Alive Sports page on Facebook. Be advised this podcast is off the record and not safe for work. Also, be sure to subscribe to the UGA Sports Live Podcast on iTunes and Google Play.
Hey everybody, welcome to the UGA Sports Live Podcast here at Champy's on Baxter. Champy's Fried Chicken, home of the best fried chicken you can get. Also, home of a fantastic plate where you can get your grilled chicken. So for those of you who have that New Year's resolution to eat a little healthier, and you go, I can't go to Champy's, that's fried chicken. They have grilled chicken here. They've got their green beans, coleslaw, the sweet heat, which they make here. Fantastic stuff. I suggest you shower in it. And, of course, their homemade ranch sauce. It's all fantastic stuff.
Catfish.
I don't mean to get political. I'm just saying I think the president should have called Champy's to cater last night.
Yeah. He's got millions. He could afford it. And besides, it's not expensive to eat here. It's fantastic. There's good prices for your family and for you to come by and have lunch. We have a bunch of folks coming in and having lunch. My name is Roddy Nabulsi. I'm joined by Jake Roos, the recruiting coordinator at UGAsports.com, and, of course, Jim Donnan, Hall of Fame coach, former head coach of the University of Georgia Bulldogs, who he's got some comments for us on the coaching search. All we've been doing the last week is really talking about coaching and recruiting, and I know it's a lot of people are like kind of wringing their hands and pulling their beards, but we'll get to the coaching stuff in here in a minute. But first, I want to give a quick shout out to Athens Ford for being a great sponsor of our show and our website. Aaron Overhead Doors for also being a sponsor of this show and the website. So if you get a chance, swing by Aaron Overhead Doors. They will take care of you. Of course, Your Pie. If you're don't want any chicken, Your Pie can take care of you with their order in. You order online, go by and pick it up. Of course, Academia Brewing. I've got the all-day IQ IPA.
Yes, the IQ IPA.
IQ IPA. I always say it that way because I want to drink it all the time. And what'd you get this week?
The Skull. I got the farmhouse again. So.
I knew you were going to do
Absolutely.
that. I knew it. Yeah, I saw you take that one down last week so fast. And, of course, Cable East, Robert Wall out in Stadium, thanks for being a sponsor of the show. And, of course, 365 Game Day. I know that we had our gear deal, but if you're looking for a year-round gear deal, swing by 365 Game Day. They are a great source of your Georgia gear. You don't want to get all that, we're 95 days away from G-Day. You got to have some new G-Day gear. Swing by them. And, of course, we're on 11 Alive's Facebook page. We're on their website, if you will. If you have time, swing by the 11alive.com. Go ahead and bookmark that. When you need news in Atlanta, you need world news, you need commentary, you need viral videos, all that stuff, 11 Alive will take care of you. And while you're on our page, we only ask you to do one thing right now. Go ahead and hit like on this 11 Alive page and hit share. We'd appreciate it. Well, I guess that's two things. But anyway, Coach, a lot going on in Athens over the last week. We've got a thread on our message board at UGAsports.com that has over 160,000 views on this coaching search. Probably the biggest thread we've had. People want to know what Kirby Smart's going to do, and we saw him hire James Coley as his offensive coordinator. He hired Todd Hartley as his tight ends coach, which I think both are very good hires. Love having Todd Hartley back in Athens, a guy that can recruit like crazy. James Coley, who's been offensive coordinator two other places. Strong recruiter, guys you have to have on your staff. He still has an opening he hasn't named a defensive coordinator. I'm not sure exactly where that stands right now. What is your take on all the, I don't want to say turnover, but where does the situation stand now?
Well, first of all, I don't know any more than you do as far as any inside scoop, but I do have the history of being in that seat where you have to hire a coach and in some cases I've made some good hires and some I've made some really bad hires. And, I understand what Coach Smart's going through, but I'm just going to go a little history lesson here and pretend I was still working on Sports Center where I used to have a little time limit, so I'm not going to talk very long about it. But
we got an hour. Go as long as you want.
I am going to say this. In the case of Jim Chaney, I felt Jim Chaney did a terrific job here in a lot of ways, and he was a very good for what we needed at the time, and he really worked very good with the whole staff and with the defense and complemented the kicking game. But last year when Coley had a chance to go to Texas A&M and Kirby brought him back, I think he pretty much made the statement there that he was the kind of the guy that he wanted to keep here in case something happened to Chaney. So in the end result, I think this was a 4-for-1 move here. We got 4 other coaches on offense, 3 of them that really had opportunities maybe to go other places. I mean, Coley had some head coaching situations at smaller schools. Pittman maybe going to Alabama, an offer to Alabama, Auburn to with the coach McGee. So, and Hankton, who knows what's going to happen with him, but the cohesiveness of that offensive staff was important to Kirby. He tried to keep Chaney, but he didn't want to lose the other guys, so he made that move, and it's one that I don't think anybody needs to apologize for. I've seen these guys coach on the field. I know what they do. You want to keep the harmony with Jake Fromm. He knows how to react to these guys being coached by him. So I thought that was a brilliant move by him last year, keeping Coley and having this in his hip pocket where he was able to keep him again and keep these other guys too. As far as the defense, I had a chance to sit in the office with Bill Parcells for 2 years. He was a defensive coach. I was an offensive coach, and we talked a lot of football, but, we didn't have big offices back then. Kind of like what Georgia has right now, 14th in the league as far as our office space and facilities in that regard. Hopefully we're going to get that rectified. You said something about it a couple months ago. They're building a new building, but that's the one thing. Fans out there, get behind getting Kirby a new meeting room. Vanderbilt's got a better meeting room than us. Work on that. But anyhow, that was the genesis of the defense that Bill Belichick picked up from Parcells, and then Bill Belichick got with Coach Saban and had him on his staff, and they really amplified it. And then Kirby went there and built on it at Alabama, and now he's here. There's no way he's going to bring in somebody to be a defensive coordinator here that doesn't know his defense. I mean, that's his bailiwick. That's what he's going to do. And last year, our staff stayed intact, but this year we lost several defensive coaches. We lost Tyson Summers and Tillman to go with Mel Tucker out there. So basically 3 defensive secondary guys that left. And he had to look at what's he going to do here to keep the harmony. And, everybody sees that Lanning had a chance to go out there as DC, and he kept him here. So he didn't keep him here to be the defensive end coach. Whether he'll be the coordinator, the co-coordinator, he's got Schumann, who's been with him for 11 years. So everybody chill on this defensive reaction here that he hadn't named a coach to, the first rattle out of the box. So I feel very good about our system, and that's the main key here. We don't want to do anything to uproot our system, which Kirby's behind the system as far as knowing the difference between one rat and one mouse. You know what I'm saying? You don't want to have to come in here and teach a guy your defense and let him have a lot of authority. Now, sometimes you have to give somebody a little bit of some kind of, to get somebody from somewhere else, you have to give them some kind of title, and that's where who knows what's going to happen there. But anybody that's worried about whether, how bad we look or what's going on, I mean, come on. Realistically, we had a bad game against Texas, but we're second in the nation in recruiting. We stole this last year as far as a bridge year. So let's get on the bandwagon again here and stop worrying about it. I'm telling you now, you're going to feel James Brown when Kirby gets his staff together. You're going to feel really good. So that's it from the old coach today. But I promise you, I feel very confident that our system's going to stay in place. That's the first thing. And then there'll be somebody that blends in. Great hire with Hartley. He's going to move in there good. He knows he's a Georgia guy. So look at what Kirby's hired so far here. Look at the supplemental people he's brought in here. So anybody's questioning whether we're, on the panic mode, come on, that's not it.
And I really want to touch on this because a lot of people obviously have asked about the Coley hire. My thoughts on it. I keep going back to this quote because I saw it after the national title, and I thought that it was a really telling quote. The stability that Clemson has was what sold Justin Ross. That's what he said. The five-star wide receiver.
Yeah.
He says the stability. They said, why did you choose to go there instead of Alabama? He says the stability that Clemson has. They don't really have coaches leaving in and out like that and learning different stuff every year. The turnover at Bama this year, massive, out of control.
Last year was
seven last year, 4 this year, maybe more, 2 more maybe to come on defense. So you make a good point there, but I just think if we start with the 4-for-1. As much as I hate to see Chaney leave, I'm a big Chaney guy, but I didn't want to see those other guys leave too because of disparity in pay that you'd have to do. So give Kirby a lot of credit for looking into the future last year when he brought Coley back. I'm high on Coley. I've watched him in the meeting rooms. I've seen him on the field. One of my quarterbacks that I trained here, Evan Sheriffs, was a quarterback at Miami. He said he's the best coach he's ever had position-wise. That's a pretty dang good deal because he had the old coach helping. But I didn't really coach him in the games. But I thought that was very vivid that he would say that about him.
He's a hell of a player. I love Evan.
And I think Evan's at Charlotte now. But I just think that I don't read these boards because I can't read, number one, and number two, I can't see. But I listen to you guys talk about it, and I just think it's important for everybody. We've challenged Kirby Smart to take over this program 3 years ago, and if you look at everything that's happened to this point, you got to be very happy about it because he started with a program that had no offensive linemen, hardly any offensive lineman on scholarship, no scholarship kicker, no scholarship snapper. I mean, a lot of things weren't in place here, and he's really turned it around. A new indoor facility, new facility down at the stadium, and we got to get a facility for our players where they spend most of the time. We got to get that going here. I hope it works out because we are dead last in SEC East in on-campus facility where the players lift weights, where they eat, where they meet. We can't even get all our players in the meeting room. So we got to get that going. And I feel like Dr. Moorhead and Greg McGarity understand that. I'm not griping about it, but it's a reality. These other people are using that against us.
Well, you saw that. I'm sure you saw that what South Carolina opened up yesterday. That thing is an absolute playground for those guys. It's got a recording studio in there. They got the barber shop. I mean, they had the kids saying, "Hey, we may never leave here," and that's what you want. Trust me. I mean, when your players are saying that and it's that impressive to them, that's what you need.
Well, and you see Missouri's building a new one. And when people watched their games last year in the end zone, Kentucky just finished one. Tennessee finished one. Vanderbilt's got a new meeting room. So everybody's always working on things like that, and I know we are too. But I think that's the only thing lacking right now. But still, with all that in place, we're still right up there, number 2 in the country in recruiting. So sky is definitely not falling here. This is not Chicken Little here.
No, I don't think so.
No, I was basically telling our folks not to panic. I mean, it's funny how everyone trusts Kirby until you don't trust him, until your coworker says, well, teases you about who's your defensive coordinator, or oh, you settled for James Coley. Kirby Smart would not have moved heaven and earth last year to keep James Coley when Coley had a $1 million plus offer to go to Texas A&M to be their offensive coordinator if he didn't want to keep him here for a reason. And all of a sudden he loses Jim Chaney, and he moves. What do you think, he wasn't going to move Coley up? The only thing I think he could have done different was the minute it was announced that Chaney was leaving, he immediately said, Coley's my guy, just from a PR standpoint. But then you would have had this complaint. Why didn't you look around? Why didn't he call anybody? So you can't win if you're Kirby Smart. If you take your time, you're struggling and everyone's turning you down. If you do something immediately, you didn't look around first. So it's damned if you do, damned if you don't. And I want to make one last point, Coach, before I turn it over to you. Meeting with someone, calling someone, interviewing someone does not mean they were offered a job. Right. I do not understand why people don't get that. Every time, in other words, have you been offered a job every time you've interviewed? No. And people go, well, this person would be a great hire. I'm sure he was offered. No, you're not. You would have offered.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
It would have made you look good to your coworker who follows Tennessee or Florida or Texas or whoever. Kirby Smart, I remember when he mentioned Dan Lanning, I'm like, who the hell's Dan Lanning? He hired Dan Lanning. Dan Lanning could be his co-defensive coordinator. Trey Scott, I didn't know who Trey Scott was.
How about Glenn Schumann?
Yeah. Who the hell knew who Glenn Schumann was? He showed, and that was the first guy he hired. And you're like, who the hell is Glenn Schumann?
Because he was his guy.
But that's my point. Kirby, in other words, we trust Kirby on the recruiting trail. And what is he doing with coaches? Coaches, he's looking for recruiters. He's kept up with these guys. He's got this. I call it a Rolodex, but I don't know if anybody even uses those anymore.
He's got it in his brain. But I think you made a good point about there maybe announcing it right out of the box just to give the symbolism that was the guy. But I think in his own way, he was trying to explore some guys to supplement Coach Coley, and Eddie Grant had a history working with him at Florida State. Enos was a guy that he knew that he just almost, tried to get in touch with when he first got the job, but he's contractually away from that. So there's nothing wrong with that. The difference is now and 10, 15 years ago, or 50 years ago, can you imagine somebody saying, Bear, what are you doing over there?
Yeah,
right. Come on, Bear. Why are you hiring Mal Moore?
Yeah.
Why would you hire Mal Moore?
Yeah.
Or Coach Broyles. Coach Broyles, you're going to hire Joe Gibbs? What's wrong with him, man? What are you thinking about? Why would you hire Joe Gibbs? He can't play dead in the Western movie. I mean, this guy's – that's the whole point. We're in a different society there.
Yeah.
And I don't want to poo-poo it. It's good for everybody to have an opinion, but, I just want to step up on the plate about I really feel good about the coaches we have on our staff. If we didn't hire anybody else, I'd still feel good because I know we're going to treat the kids right. We're going to help them graduate, and we're going to work hard. We didn't win that last 2 games, but, we had a good year. And the future, as we've said on this show, I think I look back on and listened to one like in November, I felt like I did make that point, that, hey, after the bowl season, that's going to probably be the last chance we're going to lose a game. Who knows? We probably could. Our schedule's tough, but our defense is going to be 50% better personnel-wise next year than it was this year, and
Absolutely.
our offense is going to be the same. Alabama now has lost 11 when you take those 7 guys that are going pro. They've lost 11. They're 22 starters right now.
Yeah.
And any way you look at it, you got to base it on, regardless of what Dan Mullen says, you got to base it on the team you got to beat's Alabama. That's the way it is. And I mean, certainly we got to beat Florida, but he said that they were the second best team in the SEC. I guess because they're rated number 6 and we were 7 in the coaches poll.
Some I didn't even pay attention to it, and that's not to be flippant about Dan Mullen, but
Let me be
He
flippant
said
real
that in
quick.
I'm just saying
basketball game.
you're
He said it in a basketball game in front of all the fans.
Well,
we were great year, 10-3, and we were second in the
he's
East.
known to say some
second
stupid
in the
stuff.
SEC.
Yeah, second in the SEC. Okay, well, you lost to Georgia, and you've lost to them 2 years in a row. Georgia
We lost
right
to Kentucky too, so I
Yeah.
mean they're third in the East.
Yeah, well, there you go. And you're sitting at and they won a lot of games, and Dan Mullen is sitting on a recruiting hotbed. I think he's going to turn that program around. I'm excited for him. Congratulations, Dan. Going to get in the job and, 10 win season?
Yeah, I think so.
Something like that. So,
I think so.
So, hey, Florida's back, but at the same time, Georgia's 12-0 against the SEC's last 2 years. You want to chirp, beat them. Beat Georgia. Just like I tell Georgia fans when they're, ripping on Alabama, I'm like, if you want to chirp about Alabama, beat them. Beat them on the field. You don't beat them in the PR. Don't claim, well, we have when you start pumping your chest about graduation rates and money donations and stuff like that. No.
Those things are great. And it's not that they don't matter. But at the end of the day, that's not what's going to keep your coach hired.
When your Alabama buddy, because I had one I used to work with all the time, and he just diehard Alabama guy. Didn't go to Alabama for some reason, but diehard Alabama fan. He'd always turn to me and he would tell me how great Alabama was. I'm like, yes, they are great. Congratulations. I'm happy for you. But, there's nothing you can say to him because Alabama's winning, and you just congratulate him and I'm like, hey, you're doing it.
I do think the coaching
now
turnover.
Clemson can chirp at him because Clemson
Right.
whipped him and beat him down. So Clemson can say what they want, but nobody else can.
I do think the coaching turnover at Alabama the last couple years was very salient in that game against Clemson and against us. Their defense, regardless of personnel, had a hard time making the adjustments that you normally see a Nick Saban defense make.
Yeah.
And you got guys on that staff that just don't have the experience that a Kirby Smart or a Jeremy Pruitt had, running the defense. It's nothing against Tosh, but I mean, they got guys that are very just not nearly as experienced in the big games as they used to have.
And I think it is going to affect their recruiting somewhat. They're going to have a fantastic class this year. They're probably going to have the number 1 class. The new rankings are updated. Some of their guys jumped up. Some of Georgia's guys dropped down. That happens in the final recruiting, the final rankings.
You mean as far as stars or what?
Stars, exactly. And, we have we can have a 4-star, but we have a high 4-star and kind of a low 4. There's a range on the 4 stars, range on 3 stars, and our guys bumped around. It happens. The rankings are a totality of 1, 2, sometimes 3 years of viewing these players. And then we put out our final rankings. And again, if we could watch these kids go through football practice in the spring, we could watch them at their universities, and before we had to do a final ranking, we would. But as it is, we've seen the last that we're going to see of them. We've seen their senior tape. We've seen their all-star games. We've seen them in their final camps. And this is where our analysts project they are going to do with the NFL in mind. If we say a guy's a 5-star, we expect him to be a first-round draft pick. This year, we only have 35 stars.
Yeah.
So how many we have committed now on this new rating?
Ooh, good question. I'll pull it up real quick.
Signed.
Yeah, but the point being, you've got the number 2 class in the nation. You're going toe-to-toe with them. But I think what's going to hurt Alabama next year in recruiting, or the year after that, is if I'm Kirby Smart – I'm not going to point out the fact, hey, we lost a couple coaches, but, our coach is getting hired away. But just like Justin Ross said about the turnover, was it 7 coaches, then 11 coaches in 2 years?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, go to Alabama and that coach you're signing with, he's going to be hired somewhere else. I'm just saying.
Meanwhile, you look at Clemson. I think I saw a stat on them the other day. I think that they've got 3 guys who've been there over 6 years. I think there's 4 guys who've been there over 5 years. So it's the continuity is incredible. Kids love that, too, and they respond to it in a big way.
Well, you want to know that. And here's the thing. I've never met a kid who begrudged a coach, improving his familial situation. Hey, I'm doing this for my family. I'm taking a move up. I have seen kids get livid when a guy takes a parallel job. Hey, I'm the DB coach here, and I'm the DB coach there. It's like, wait a minute, you spent 2 years recruiting me to your school, and now you're bolting. I do respect coaches that also say, hey, even though I'm leaving, I recruited you to the school. I still think it's the best school for you. There are a lot of coaches will do that, and I think that's great.
I'd like to see a new rule implemented with this new signing date deal that if the position coach or the head coach leaves on the early signing date, you have a chance to still sign with somebody else at the second signing date.
Completely agree.
Yeah.
That would certainly rectify some of these things that happened, because there was a mass exodus of coaches after that signing date on the Wednesday that we had in December that took other jobs, and there's been a couple head job situations like that too.
Yeah, then Thursday you saw all these headlines pop up. It's like, you sorry guys, come on.
Yeah, I just don't see how you can look a kid in the face and say, boy, I want you to come here, and then the next day you're leaving. And
I'm going to tell you a quick story about a situation where you have a guarantee. You have a guarantee that you can't make a mistake. We had a young lady here. She was friends with Josh, who owns Champies. She had to go out to Athens Ford to buy a vehicle. Went out there, was a little bit nervous. Josh went with her. Everything worked out. The folks out there took fantastic care of her. Bought a pre-owned vehicle, 30,000 miles on it, Ford Edge. Fantastic vehicle. I love the edges. Really want to try that RS one out there, the one with the – it's got some crazy speed behind it. We need to go try that for the UG.
You just got a new car.
Well, my wife needs one. So no, I just want to test drive it and take it all over the streets in Athens. But – I thought what was fantastic, if you have somebody who's a little nervous about buying a vehicle, especially a pre-owned vehicle, you have a lifetime powertrain warranty out at Athens Ford, as long as it's under 80,000 miles. So talk about, nothing changing on you after signing day. After you sign the dotted line, you're not on the hook for anything. It's not, by the way, thanks for signing. By the way, we're going to this other school. You're kind of stuck with where you are, or you're stuck with the vehicle you have.
Good luck with your lemon.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Lifetime powertrain warranty. And when I went out to met with Athens Ford the first time, I'm like, give me the one thing you want people to understand about Athens Ford. And I thought they'd say, oh, we're great with customer service because they've won all these customer service awards. They've won Best of Athens Award. They have ridiculous amounts of people that come back and buy car after car after car from them. I get it. They said, no, we want people to understand the lifetime powertrain warranty because you don't get that anywhere else. You get that at Athens Ford. And I'm like, yeah, I can point that out. And now we came in, Josh telling us about it. Young lady went out, got one. And I'm like, well, there's the security that you have. So when you get a chance and you want to go out and get that brand new Ford Raptor, 2019, I get it. But if at the same time the Raptor isn't in your budget and you need to go out and get a pre-owned vehicle, 30,000 miles on it, 20,000 miles, 79.95 thousand miles on it. Get the lifetime powertrain warranty on it. You can't miss out on that. Very, very important.
All right, we got some questions rolling in. A lot of people wanting to talk some recruiting today, as you might expect.
I wonder why. What did you do at UGASports.com to make people want to talk about recruiting?
We released a new hot board today. So we came out with that, and that was ahead of all the official visits that are coming up this weekend. We are expecting several visitors in town to see the Bulldogs over the course of this weekend. But
hey, they know how to feed them two champions.
That's right.
Feeding them lunch in the indoor building on Saturday.
Hey, and don't let them tell you champions never won you a recruit for sure. We've got a lot of questions. Chuck Ward, our good friend, wants to know. He says, Coach, let's say you have 3 scholarships. Who do you take? A tight end, wide receiver, defensive back, a tight end, 2 defensive backs? Or do you just take the first 3 best guys you can get? How do you kind of spin the spots?
Well, in my case, I think I have 2 scholarships. I don't know that we have 3. Maybe. I don't know that. But you got to look. You got to go for all these guys and then see where the chips fall the last week. You know what I'm saying? So much can change. But you got a priority there with defensive back, wide receiver, I think. And obviously with the tight end situation changing around a little bit, we're looking at a kid down there I saw on you told me anyhow.
We'll talk about that. We were
recruiting a tight end. But I think it just looks – you got to look at your squad needs more than anything. And then if a guy's ability just usurps the squad needs over to the point you just can't turn him down, you take the guy first. You know what I'm saying? So I thought you read me out that deal this morning about your list, which was good. You know, you had the temperature and all that, and I think that's pretty good the way you got it rated. I don't know that much about who's going to be freezing and who's going to be hot, but well, I do know this, that I would take certainly one more defensive back and a wide receiver. Offensive line, we got some – we would take one, but I think that's a more the situation to me that seems to be the most – not glaring, but where we need the most there. You know, we're losing 2 wide receivers that started, and also McCole on top of that. You lose Terry and Ridley, and then you got McCole. You lose 3 receivers of that capability. Now, that's a big jump off.
3 guys who were on the field at the same time.
Right.
Often.
Absolutely.
And Isaac Nada, who was also on the field at the same time.
Right.
So that's like your 4 pass catching options on a lot of your plays last year.
I can see Demetrius Robertson making a big move now without the competition in front of him and the knowledge of the system and ability to be in the weight room and all and know what's demanded of. I just think his big playability will help him jump up and maybe make a big contribution next year.
I think when we're talking about that, obviously need is got to be key amongst all things, but simultaneously you've got to gauge interest. You've got to gauge guys who are going to be able to make it into school. That's another place where you spent a spot on Nadab Joseph last year, didn't end up qualifying, ended up hurting you in the long run because you kind of wasted that spot. So I think that you've got to weigh it out in terms of who's interested, best available, and then
the fit. How do they fit with our team?
Right.
Is it going to be a distraction? This guy coming in who's more of an I guy instead of a we guy,
right.
And all those things factor in. And I would say, based on the last 3 years, we got the master planner there on getting the guys in. So, but the demand for those 2 or 3 spots is going to be where you got to be able to cover your butt as far as who. Can I say butt on this show?
You can.
I've said worse.
So you got to be able to cover something as far as who, keep some options open. If this happens, we'll take this guy. If this, blah, blah, blah. And we'll see how it rolls. But
my guess.
Tell me about Pickens.
Well,
I want to hear about it.
Well, my guess today, people asking, how do you want to spend those spots? My guess today, I feel that you finish with a defensive back. I'm going to go with either Kyer Elam or Nick Cross. I think you get one of those 2 guys. Certainly not going to get both. And then
how about the kid from Cali? DB. Didn't you have a DB on there too? One more you were talking about?
On the hot board?
Maybe it wasn't.
Okay. Now you've got. Okay, so Brent Tucker says, what about Mark Anthony Richards? Mark Anthony Richards is a running back, a receiving back, a very versatile athlete, guy who plays a number of positions. I don't see that necessarily happening. I think Georgia's been kind of cool there throughout. He is popping up, and it looks like he's going to be visiting this weekend. I'd be surprised if Georgia ended up being the ultimate landing spot just out of comfort's sake for him. But I think that you need to get over to UGAsports.com and read this update that I did today with Brett Seether. 2019 tight end. He was offered last week. One of the hottest recruits in the nation, Alabama, Penn State, Miami, Georgia Tech, all these schools pouring in on him here at the last minute. He's got TCU leading the way right now.
And didn't you guys see him at, I think you reminded me that you saw him down at a Combiners.
Yeah.
And you were kind of impressed with him, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell us about that. I mean, they share, man.
Go ahead.
No, he was. I mean,
I was drinking.
He showed up. He showed up. Yeah, Roddy was having Mai Tais and flirting with girls, but I was there doing my job. And he's a really big kid, a very physical kid, great blocker.
Can he run?
Looks like it. He can run very well, and he looks like a great pass catcher too. Big soft hands. So I think that he physically reminds me a little bit of Luke Ford. He's probably not quite as big, but not much shorter. Kind of
Luke is really tall and skinny.
Right. This guy is just a hair shorter, but a very similar build in that regard.
Only 6'5".
So what would happen?
Right.
What would happen there, based on what you just told me, reading these tea leaves, if, for instance, those two DBs, we didn't get either one of them,
Mm-hmm.
then we would maybe jump in a little bit stronger on a tight end then, right?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that this
And
kid,
that's not to say that we wouldn't go for him right off the bat, but, I mean, that's the way you got to look at it.
Exactly. And I think that, this is a big visit weekend for him. The primary reason I encourage you to read this article, well, because I wrote it, of course, but but Todd Hartley, he talks extensively about Todd Hartley, what a big role he's played in all this. He was very close to him at Miami. He said, I planned my visit to Georgia kind of with the idea that Todd Hartley would be at Georgia. He said, and then, what do you know, it worked out. So go read that one from Brett Seether.
It's a great insight on Todd Hartley.
That's really good. I like Hartley. And one other thing I would say here, because we hadn't had but one show since the last show a long time ago, and I forgot this last week, but I just think Dale McGee shoots for the stars for the guys he goes after. And if you can't get those guys, wait till next year.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And we needed a big back, and he took that kid from Florida who's going to really help us. But once we didn't get Sanders, you don't see us going back, even though with Zamir's situation with his knee and everything and Holyfield leaving. But we didn't go out there and just kind of reach for somebody. You know what I mean? This guy is on top of it now. I'm telling you. I don't see many people turning him down. And I tell you one thing, I was really happy is he got that kid from McKeechin, that defensive lineman. You can say what you want to about position recruiting, but I know Trey Scott had a lot to do with it. But lead dog on that horse was Coach Coach McGee. I mean, tell us about him real quick. 2020.
2020, Jamil Burrows. Yeah, one of the elite guys in that class. Not the biggest guy, maybe not even a guy that you would spot and say, hey, wow, that guy's a dominant force.
When you see Trayvon Walker walk through, you're like,
you're like, that guy is a collegiate football player. This kid, look, Jamil's built well. He's a little smaller on the small side, though. But, man, when he gets out on the field, he is a complete wrecking ball. Unblockable, great speed. A guy who just breaks through lines. I wanted to touch on Pickens, though, because you asked about Pickens. We got several questions about George Pickens.
Go for it.
I think if I were betting today, I think that he is probably Georgia's biggest target remaining. I think that he's probably the guy they want most on this list. And I think that they might have a good shot. They're going to get a visit from him. Tennessee's expecting a visit. Florida State is as well. The main concern that you've got surrounding George Pickens is still, and it has been this for over a year, as far as I've been aware, it's academics. There are still questions surrounding whether or not he will qualify, and that's whether at Georgia, whether at Auburn, Tennessee. It's very much up in the air from what I'm told. So I could see Georgia being a bit wary about that, for that reason. And I think several schools will be. That's the main concern with Pickens. Like I said, I do think you're in it with him. I think that it's a situation where, the standing is good. I just don't know if it's going to be a situation where he's going to be a guy that you finish with and then end up with him in the fall. It's a bit up in the air in my opinion. So I look for them to focus efforts a little stronger elsewhere on guys who are a little surer bets.
Good answer.
Yeah, and you mentioned his possible grade issue. I think you mentioned a year ago, and a lot of people were like, no, he's got no problems. He's got a whole senior year.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know that we've had any more clarity. They put to their point that he does have a senior year, and the coaches will be able to see already what he did in his fall semester, and they'll know what he needs in his spring semester, and that will give them some clarity as to where he stands.
Well, here's the point, though, that I would say, playing devil's advocate, with only 2 or 3 scholarships, whatever we have, why would you rock the boat and go after him if you didn't think you could get him in and lose somebody can get in? So
that's why Kirby's paid $7 million a year. I mean, it's tough.
And
Plumlee, you need a tight end.
We still got Plumlee on the blue shirt. I think the big deal with him was, will he accept that? Because everybody's telling him, hey, you're our guy. We want you. But there's no difference except he just can't enroll till school starts on that. But
he
can see he's going red shirt.
We had a very good update on him.
Yeah, Chad Simmons spoke with him, and really, I got to tell you, it's the first I've seen anybody speak to him, since signing day. He sounds still very interested in Georgia. It doesn't seem dissuaded by the blue shirt. He said, look, at first I was a little turned off by it, but I've come around on that idea, and I think that it might end up being a good fit for me still. I still really like what they've got going on.
Watch the tape on the guy. Goodness gracious.
You got to remember, Mississippi State offered him as a DB to start with. So you talk about an athletic quarterback. The kid is athletic. And, when they tell you blue shirt, you're like, wait a minute, I'm a top guy. Why? You take it almost as an insult. At first. And then
maybe so.
But to his credit, he said, the more I thought about it, it made sense. And he says the only real drawback is he doesn't like the idea of not being able to come in June 1st with the rest of the crew and go through all those summer workouts, 7-on-7s, all the volunteer
go play
workouts.
Baseball. He's a good baseball player for him.
Exactly.
But let me just say this one point, too, that I would make on Kirby's behalf. He probably says, we need these other players. Would you consider this?
Oh yeah.
And so it had to be a deal where he said he would consider it. So
he did.
Because at that point our quarterback situation was so unreal that I don't think he would have even brought it up unless he thought the kid would consider it. So that's a good answer there, and let's get some more. I'm learning a lot here about these.
Well, first we got to
we got to talk a shout out here some your pie.
Well,
I want to tell you one thing about your pie. What are you going to do first? You going to do the Ford?
No, you go ahead. Why did you Ford?
My granddaughter, my son went out to Oklahoma to a friend of his was just selected the governor of the state, and they went to high school together. And it just goes to show you anything can happen in America. This kid, and he is very deserving. But he went out to his inauguration, and so my wife and I had a chance to keep my granddaughter. And the first day, she said, well, I'm going to go to lunch with somebody and everything. And so she comes back and says, I said, where'd you go? She said, we went out to Your Pie. I said, I really love that place. I said, you can go in there and order anything you want. I mean, this is a commercial for my granddaughter. You can order anything you want. She said, I don't put a lot on mine, but I get the right kind of everything. And so I said, if you talking to Roddy Nabosky? But I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Hey, we're going to get Drew French. Sign her up. Let her be your spokesperson.
But she was all fired up about it now. And she went with Coach Fox's daughter, Olivia. They're good friends. And she said they go there all the time. So, hey, that's great to hear.
Yeah, try to go to the one on the one at 5 Points. That place is always packed. Students go in there all the time. You see townies, you see everybody in there because it's just fantastic food. And I love the new order before you arrive. Not that it takes long to get there. It's not like some other pizza chains that you go order one. It takes them an hour and a half to get you anything. This place, you order it, sit down, it's ready for you. But being able to order ahead of time is fantastic. You walk in, it's ready to go.
These two guys here got the answers.
Yeah, they do.
I mean, if anybody does, who's the new defensive coordinator, man?
Yeah, hook us up. I do want to give a quick shout out to Aaron Overhead Doors. They've been a fantastic sponsor of our show. They did a fantastic sponsorship of our 321 columns at UGASports.com. They've been good to us. I can't tell you how much. We love having them on the site. We're talking about 5 stars, we're talking about ratings. Their rankings are only going up. Every time you look at their Google rankings, their Better Business Bureau rankings, their Best of Gwinnett rankings, they're always 5-star. And like I said on last week's show, the guy that's running it, Ryan Lucia, he's not a overhead door guy. He's a customer service guy who runs an overhead door company. So if he were running a restaurant, he was running a brewery, he was running a hotel, it would be a 5-star because that's the way the guy approaches his business. Terry College of Business graduate, a guy who's gone to UGA, who supports UGA. So if you need anything in your garage door fixed, you need to replace it. There's some ugly butt garage doors out there that just really detract from a house. This is a guy who can make you. They have some. I don't call them artistic doors, but they have some doors that are just stunning. And it's like your garage door doesn't have to be ugly. It can actually make your house look better. Here's a guy that can do it. He has a great team of designers out there that can show you what your house would look like with the new stuff on it. So check out with Aaron Overhead Doors.
Give him a call right here, 678-960-3360.
Look at you.
It's on the,
I know.
it's on the broadcast.
Well, you're reading it, so I appreciate it. The sign's behind us. If you're watching this, you got it right there. Hit them up or go by their website and let them know that we sent you there.
Absolutely. All right, a couple more recruiting questions here. A.B. Harding says, is Georgia looking at Jonathan Mingo? Wide receiver commit out of Ole Miss. His is a name that I have heard mentioned, but it's been some time.
It's been a while.
So I'm a bit skeptical on that one. He's a guy from the state of Mississippi. He's been committed to them since the summer. Georgia was a very interesting option, I think, for him early on. But it's going to be hard, I think, to beat out those in-state relationships down the stretch. Not saying it can't happen, but you got to get Mingo in for a visit. We'll see how it goes after that. I'm not sure.
I'm not holding my breath on Mingo.
I am not either. Nor am I on Giovanni Shepard, who will be visiting this weekend as well. Watch out for him. 4-star offensive lineman, Texas commit. One of the biggest.
Good-looking kid.
Woo, he's a monster of a man. And, I think it'd be interesting to see how things go on that visit. Look, you can't write Sam Pittman off ever. But I don't see the kid getting out of the state of Texas. Just another one to keep it.
But see, again, that comes back to that question: do you take another offensive lineman? Do you take a tight end that you need? Do you take another defensive back that you need? You obviously need a wide receiver. But you've got some offensive linemen in this class. You've got a pretty good offensive lineman room. You've got limited spots. And I know that some people were complaining that
this guy's a war daddy.
Yeah, the idea that
really big, isn't he?
Yeah, he's ridiculous.
It's tough to fit them all in. You told us that you have more guys wanting to come here than you have spots.
Absolutely.
You want to make sure the ones that want to come are the difference makers.
Yeah.
A lot of them want to come to this.
Demetrius Isom says, what about Jay Ward out of Colquitt County? And I'm interested that it's taken so long for somebody to ask me about him because he's a kid who's gained a lot of traction around his name, especially with bigger tier schools. LSU seems to be one that's really emerging for Jay Ward. I'm going to tell you, I have not heard much surrounding Georgia and Jay Ward just yet.
What does he play?
He's a defensive back. But he is a guy that I would watch down the stretch because I think he's a guy that they could keep eyes on. If you get a feel for Elam or Cross and it looks like the things are going south with those guys, Jay Ward's definitely a guy I would check on. So
right now on Cross, just for the fans out there, he's committed
to Florida State.
And Mel Tucker was in there pretty good with him, and then things changed a little bit. But it's going to be a reach to get him, isn't it?
I think so, yeah.
And then you got
the thing about him was, though, that surprised us was, we thought Georgia would be off the board once Tucker left. That's not what he told us at the All-American game, and then coaches were right up there seeing him.
We got a shot
after the dead period.
And then Elam, who is it, Florida and us, you think?
Yeah, I think it's down to those two. And look, Florida's going to be tough to beat there. You've got his uncle Matt who played there. He's from Palm Beach Gardens, so he's got some connections down there. I mean, this is a kid who has a lot of Florida ties. So it's going to be a dogfight to the end for them.
Well, let me ask you this. Who's recruiting him for Florida? Is their secondary coach recruiting him?
Yes.
And somebody said why don't you tell him? Somebody said he was going to be the D coordinator at Maryland. Just throw that out there.
Oh, well, there you go.
I don't know if that's true or not. Let's use a little negative recruiting.
All right.
He's going to join the Chiefs. Yeah.
We got a good question here from Ronnie Brown. He's always sending in good stuff for us.
Hey, I mean, you put stuff out there, they believe it. Hey,
I'm going to get so many questions.
Hey, here's something.
This.
Eddie Grand, staying in Kentucky.
Yeah. Book it. All right, Coach, this one's for you, and I think it's a really good question. Ronnie Brown wants to know what are some of the things as a coach, you look for when you're hiring a coordinator? Obviously, you want them to fit in, but what are some of those intangible things? What are the things that you kind of have to have out of a guy who's coordinating one side of the ball? Or
You
the
just
other?
want, first of all, you want knowledge of the system that you want to run, because he's got to impart that not only to his staff but the players too. You want that kind of confidence level that you can make those decisions when the band's playing, and also in the preparation. For instance, when I took a job at Oklahoma, there were several coaches there that had been there. And Coach Switzer told me in the interview process, there's a lot of people here that know what they know. But what I want you to do is teach them what you know.
Right.
So being a former quarterback, being a former coordinator, things like that, he was interested in me from a leadership perspective as much as anything. And I think that's what Kirby's looking at here. In the grand scheme of things, defensively, he's going to be the ultimate guy, because he was the ultimate guy with Mel. I mean, they work together, but it's his defense. So, but he knows these other guys know it inside and out, Lanning and Schumann. So, what the responsibilities will be, who knows? But as far as the bringing in a guy to be the defensive coordinator, I just don't see that happening outside the staff. Now, it could, if all of a sudden. I mean, it can't.
I want to ask you this, because you mentioned this on a show some time back, and I thought it was a fascinating insight into hiring a coach. You talk about putting them up on the board. Now, when I've been interviewed, they said, hey, what's your best quality? What's your worst quality? All the standard, interview questions. But the way you described it, you walk into a coaching interview and it's a test.
Exactly, because if you can't,
so explain putting them on the board, because I want to go.
If you can't handle it in front of the staff, and and you can't, let's say,
so explain the process.
You guys are out there. Well, the first thing you do is you go up on the board, you put them on the board, and say, okay, give me what you do against 4 verticals, or let's just say it's a defensive coach. How do you handle this? How do you incorporate practice time? The day before the game. I mean, there's all these things, one after another. And not only do you have your defensive staff in there, you have your offensive staff in there to see how he's going to blend in, because it's all in the family type deal. You want somebody that's you feel good about, So the other thing that you do is, hey, okay, we're recruiting JoJo here. Let's go through a home visit. I want you to tell him what you're going to sell on University of Georgia, because you don't need somebody going out there that can't handle an in-home visit, because all of a sudden we put Todd Hartley out there to see this kid the day after he got hired. You don't send him in there by himself unless you know what he's capable of, do you?
Correct.
Yeah.
So he's been through that process with him. Even though he's been at Georgia, that doesn't mean that he can't. So that shows that Kirby has supreme confidence, because I promise you this, if Dale was down there last Thursday night, there was a picture of him, right?
Yeah, there was.
And then Todd goes in there
last night.
That's a tough act to follow, so you better have your P's and Q's going there. So on the interview, it's just and sometimes you don't do enough of it, which I didn't do enough on one guy in particular, but I took it from another coach. But I'm just going to say this, that Kirby's very, very much on top of what he wants. And you also need to know, how's the guy going to react to your style?
Yeah.
Let's just say he's coaching with a guy that's a hands-off coach, and now he comes in here with a hands-on coach like Kirby. How's he going to react to, guy getting on your butt a little bit, which that's going to happen. I mean, every coach is going to do it. So you got to have thin skin in certain situations. You got to have thick skin in the other. So the whole thing looks at it as far as the interview, though, on the board. If you can't do it on the board, say goodnight, Gracie.
See, that's what I'm going to start doing when we interview people at UGASports.com. I'm going to be like, okay, you're talking to a 5-star tight end. Give me your first 6 questions.
Sure.
That's a good way to do it.
Right now. Give them to me. Oh, and he mentions he likes to collect rocks. What's your next question? Just –
because you only got so many questions. The thing that I always told a guy about recruiting, you got to realize that there's 4 other people going in there to recruit him. What's he doing? How's he recruiting him compared to you?
Absolutely.
What differentiates you from him, your school? Because bottom line, that's going to be the first thing that he sees about our school is your man-to-man talk to him. So there's a lot of coaching going on that.
That's some Sun Tzu art of war. Know thy enemy as thyself.
Exactly. I always told our guys,
this man could recruit.
I always told our guys, wherever that kid meets with the other coaches that comes in there, you go to a different place because you want to differentiate yourself, because all of a sudden at the end everybody starts everybody, you can't remember who told you what, but then all of a sudden you were in this area and you were telling them this and everybody else was together and he might get it screwed up. So go and visit with him in different surroundings than everybody else. Meet other people beside the coach, whether it's a guidance counselor, whether it's a 3rd grade teacher. Like I told you, I got a guidance counselor at school in Florida one time to hide this kid out of the bowling alley. They never knew where he was, But I mean, this is why we got the show, to tell you some different things. But I think
that's great stuff.
I think overall, though,
bowling alley, love it.
Hey, it was Joe Kynes and Ray Perkins were looking everywhere but Disney World for that kid, and he was at the bowling alley, man.
Sneaky
It was good.
Oh, that's awesome.
Joe asked me that after he worked for me. He said, "Where did y'all put that Kirby kid?" I said, "Coach, if I told you, you'd be mad." He said, "Come on, tell me." I said, "He was at the bowling alley."
That's awesome. Yeah, that's why we make Jake differentiate himself. He has to wear a tutu every time he interviews a player.
Yeah. It's the Chacos. That's the secret. That's the real secret.
But it's to your point, though, and Jake will back me up on this. We will meet some very talented players, and the first thing that I say to I start busting them. I start making fun of them because everybody has been, you're just the greatest.
Yeah, they're
whatever, they're flattering, and I'm like, look, this kid's, he hears this all day long. So I start making fun of them, and they joke back with me, and they make fun of me, and all of a sudden, we're having a good time.
You got to build a relationship.
Exactly. Now, Jake actually identifies with these kids really well.
I'm a child.
I was going to say he's not immature, but I'm just saying
what's great about
he's young
that, though,
and gets along with them well, and he doesn't BS them. He talks to them in a honest manner and doesn't bow down and salivate all over talking to these guys, and it's they appreciate the sincerity, and that's why Jake is able to get it. This is the once a year. It's the new year. I got to give him one compliment, and then I'll be done for the year. Let's get this out of the way.
All right,
you get in the race, right?
That's my race.
But I would
say
this. I would say this for the site, from a site perspective, the people reading your stuff. Everybody can talk to these kids early. Because they're really in a situation where they glutton for any kind of attention.
Yep.
But down the stretch, guys like you that have built that relationship, that's where you really, to me, and I told you this last year, that's where to me you really come on strong, because they know that you treated them like you said you were going to, and they build that trust, and they're going to tell you how they feel for the most part, and that means a lot to a kid that this guy from day one, everything he told me, if I said don't say anything about it, he hadn't done it. And it's a tough deal. You're competing with so many other people to find out what this guy, along with the coaches, right? I mean,
sure. Absolutely.
Well, the only person that compares is Academia Brewing Company to actually having trust in them. I trust every beer that I have from them, just like I trust Jake to get the story. I'm drinking the IQ IPA. One of the few. I say it's one of the few IPAs. There are two like a number of IPAs, but this by far is my favorite. And I know that Athens has a lot of IPAs.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of
hometown IPAs.
There are, but I've had them all. Well, this is my favorite. Not because they're a sponsor of the show, because I actually had this before they were sponsored the show, and I'm like, that's good. And that's kind of what made us look into them, was the fact that they have great beer. Then we went out there and found, holy crap, these guys can cook. Because you think of, we say Academia Brewing Company, you're like, oh, it's a beer joint.
Yeah, maybe they'll have some pretzels on the bar.
Exactly.
Not at all.
And then you come to find out, they were ranked Athens' #1 new restaurant a couple years ago. So when you get a chance and you're in town, we know they had all those viewing parties for the games. now that there aren't as many games, if you want to, there's not many football games, but there's a lot of basketball games. Now, tonight, Georgia plays Kentucky. They got Florida this Friday. Tom Crean.
Friday or Saturday?
Excuse me, Saturday. Saturday they got.
I would hate to go over there on
I was
Friday.
going Florida Friday. It just kind of flowed together. So, but no, there'll be
Dan Mullen coming up.
Well, they're the number 2 team in the SEC, Coach. You know that. But if you get a chance, and if you're not going to the Stag, which you should, they need the support out there. All those next 2 games are sold out.
No, there you go.
So if you do not have tickets, swing by Academia. I guarantee you the game will be on there, and you'll be able to get fantastic beer and wonderful, wonderful food. Again, just some of the best food you can get in town with an actual chef out there cooking. So big fan. And again, if you want to eat healthy, you can do that here at Champions with the grilled chicken they have, or you can swing out by Academia.
One last question here I want to touch on, and it's an interesting one, something we haven't talked a ton about over on the boards, but something that I think Georgia fans kind of caught wind of this week and weren't too happy about, and that was Jaden Hazelwood's comments. If you haven't seen the video of him, he's getting a tattoo. His mom's
with
there.
His mom.
His aunt, I think, is the other lady in the room. And basically, he's talking to this reporter or some guy. I don't know who this guy is. He may be a very well respected. I'm not dissing on this guy. I'm just saying I just don't know who he is. But they're talking to him about the process and going through all of this. And he kind of came around and said that the word that really set everybody off was fake. He said that there was some fake love going on. He felt that there was a used card salesman approach. Now, he came back and said, after the video came out, he said, I was talking about Jim Chaney. I felt like Jim Chaney was trying to sell me on something that wasn't the truth. Overall, here's my I'll just give you my quick take on it. I love Jaden. I've talked to him a lot. I've worked with him a lot. He's a fantastic player. Always been super respectful to me. My advice is time to shut it down. Time to quit talking. Let's move on.
Time to grow the hell up.
Get to Norman and do your thing. Don't worry about Georgia's sales pitches anymore.
This is a guy, and again, I've known Jaden since he was a freshman in high school. Jaden is all about building his brand.
Yep.
He's all about being a pro. We mentioned on this show when we asked him about there were some questions about his commitment status and who else he was recruiting. He said, I'm not recruiting anybody else to Georgia. And my commitment status is, as long as I think Georgia is the best school to get me to the league, I am committed to Georgia. And he said, if I think another school is going to get me to the NFL, then that will be my school. And I get it, and I do not fault him for that. That is, he wants to do what's in the best interest of Jaden Hazelwood. Congratulations. Again, and I said it the other day, use college, don't let college use you.
Sure.
But if you want to be a pro, if you are so worried about, fostering your brand, which, we tell them at Rising Seniors, watch your brand. Don't burn bridges. You don't say stuff like that. Watch the NFL. Anytime they say anything negative about a past team, a past coach, it comes back to bite them in the butt, and you make enemies that way. It's not worth it. I mean, last thing you want to do is Georgia's facing Oklahoma in the playoffs, and that's coming back up again, and the Georgia players are annoyed, and they're going after you, they're chirping at you. Same with the Georgia players. Just keep your mouth shut. Grow up. Yep. Don't go on Twitter and tweet best teams.
It's over.
His mom said though, didn't she say that they had a lot of respect for Kirby and Coley and all that?
She talked about how much she loved Georgia and how they were always family.
But it's over.
That's my point.
It's done. That stuff's all done. You've made your call. Let sleeping dogs lie at this point.
Yeah, especially from a tattoo parlor.
That's the part I don't. Yeah, I got a thing about that. But my point is, like you said, let it go. It's done. It's over with. It's not worth the headache that it could bring you down the line. You've done so well trying to build your brand. It's so easy in today's society to blow it up with one ill-conceived word, one ill-conceived phrase. One moment, I'm one tweet away from being fired. I know. I'm gonna say one thing too snarky, and it's over. That's the world we live
in.
Welcome
to UGASports Live, hosted by Jake Roos.
But here's the point:
protect your brand. Don't take shots because it's not right. And I say the same thing to Georgia. When Georgia was chirping about the best team, like Notre Dame, getting killed in the playoffs, then they turn around to get pantsed in the Sugar Bowl. That came back on them tenfold, 10 times worse than what they put out. Don't run your mouth.
Because everybody likes to
Throw it back
jump
in your
on
face.
it. But
Absolutely.
I think the thing that all of us need to do is be a little bit more concerned about what we have and instead of who's not here. You know, I mean, there's nothing you can do about guys that leave or guys that, regardless why they do or how it happens. But, hey, we got so many good kids. I mean, that's the one thing that I hope I can add to this program, being around there in the training room, you know, getting treatment. Everything. We got good, respectful kids that know how to act and really do, to me, represent the G.
Yeah, when you also see them when they're in the NFL, they're still repping the G. So shout out to all the NFL former Georgia players in the NFL playoffs this weekend and the championship weekend.
Boy, you got to think they're going to be selling that this weekend.
Yeah.
How about Todd Gurley saying the best decision I ever made on a tweet?
Yeah,
Come
that's
on,
big.
man.
You got Sony Michel in there. You got David Andrews, Ben
Oh, I got to
Watson,
say one more thing.
Chris Conley,
How old?
Justin Houston,
Keep going. How old is the coach?
Isaiah Wynn.
The head coach of the L.A. Is he 32?
32.
Yeah, I believe that's correct.
Boy, he has no experience. That guy is too young. How old is Dan Lanning?
I think about as old as my
33 or
shoes.
34?
Yeah.
Boy, he's too young.
Too young.
So come on, man.
Kirby Smart's too young. He doesn't know what he's doing.
Experience.
But by the same token, Mel Tucker was too old at whopping 46 years old.
To be fair, I had no idea that's how old Mel Tucker was. I thought he was nearing 60. Look,
rude.
I'm sorry.
So
you said
rude.
the same thing.
I never said that. I never said that. He's a hater.
Background, though. Let me tell you
He's a
something.
hater.
When I get my players or ex-players that played for me, when they say a guy can coach, that's pretty strong. And when
It's the guys that are in the industry.
And when Lanning was hired last year, when I got 3 or 4 guys telling me, "Boy, you got a steal there," hey, that makes my mouth water.
Absolutely.
And that answers our last question. So anyway, we're going to wrap it up with that. Big shout out to Athens Ford Champions for letting us be in their restaurant. 11 Live for being on their page. Aaron Overhead Doors for supporting not only the podcast but the website. Of course, Academia Brewing Company. Swing out there when you get a chance. Your pie, you need to get one this week. If you get one this week and let me know about it, I would greatly appreciate it. And
I got one.
I'm just saying. Maybe you can co-host the next Your Pie commercials with Coach Donna's granddaughter. So we'll have it set up.
Julia.
Thanks to 365 Game Day. And, of course, Cable East, Robert Wall out in Statham. Appreciate you being a big supporter of our show. And thanks to all you people who shared. I know you've already done this. You've shared this podcast with your friends, right? Come on.
Go read the hot board.
Yeah. Read the hot board. Check out all the good stuff at UGASports.com.
That hot board is on fire.
It is good stuff. We will talk to you next week.
That's it for this episode of the UGA Sports Live Podcast. Tune in next week for more Georgia Bulldogs news and notes from Athens.